Of all the stages of man, the phase of teenager is the most awkward and peculiar. Seemingly innocent girls who used to find endless delight in hosting tea parties with mud cakes for their dressed-up dolls would morph into sullen princesses who out of the blue spend most of their time in front of a mirror or on a cell phone, all behind closed doors. Cute boys who used to climb trees and catch bugs for entertainment would change into moody minors who would grunt or mumble if they answer you at all, and the child that once told you absolutely everything seems to have secrets he only shares with his friends. In order to become an adult, it's inevitable to go through this phase, and since we've experienced it ourselves, we gather our memories from that time and try to assist our own teenagers on the journey to adulthood. But times, technology, and trends change at such a rapid pace that we seem to always be a couple of steps behind. This phase between child and adult is so crucial to a young person growing up into a responsible member of society, and the window period for us as parents, to install a moral compass, is so small that the responsibility of forming a young mind seems daunting. Apart from the life lessons we transfer to them, there is really not much else to do but guide them through these crucial passages of time. As if the young mind does not face enough challenges through these formative years, the body also seems to have a mind of its own. Hairs start to sprout in odd places, while the voice boxes on boys change pitch and girls gain curves. As if this period in life does not have enough challenges, limbs and bones grow at different times, lending you that feeling that your spirit does not quite fit into the vessel it was meant for. It's a time peppered with firsts. First love, first kiss, first shave, first driving lesson. No doubt the teenage years are the most exciting, confusing, and intense times of our lives, but no matter how overwhelmed we become with the urge to experiment during this phase, I doubt that the large majority of teenagers think about their first kill. Demographically speaking, children form part of the vulnerable sector of society, and that most likely is why when a child commits a murder in a violent, unprovoked, and sadistic manner, our logic struggles to digest the phenomena. In today's episode, I want to share with you a story, and, if like me, you are left with more questions than answers, feel free to share them on all our social media platforms. We love hearing from you, and these cases are so nightmarish that they will most likely linger on your mind long after the end of the show. So kick back, relax, and let me tell you about the worst murder committed by children the world has ever seen. As I've mentioned before, the teenage years are challenging, but the terrible twos take a firm second place. Babies change into balls of energy, ready to launch themselves at whatever looks interesting. Anyone who's ever tried to navigate shopping while accompanied by a toddler will testify that mothers deserve medals for being able to manage both successfully. To Denise Bulger, being a mother was her destiny. She met her husband at the age of 18 and the two soon married. Coming from a big family, Denise wanted a big brood, but after her first pregnancy resulted in a stillbirth, Denise took no chances. Prenatal care was doubled up and every precaution possible was taken care of, and finally, she and husband Ralph welcomed a beautiful bouncing boy named James Patrick Bulger into the world. The Bulger household was filled with love. Denise's extended family was incredibly close, and James was showered with affection from both his parents. Like most stay-at-home moms, Denise spent every moment with her child. On the morning of Friday the 12th of February, 1993, Denise and a friend had some errands to run at the Strand Mall in Liverpool, the city in which they lived. It's a massive plaza with more than 100 shops, and since the two ladies decided to not take the stroller, since there would not be enough room in the car for the shopping as well. Denise would resent herself, as she did with many other decisions she took that day. As the shopping for the day wrapped up, Denise had one final purchase to make at the butcher shop. Just before letting go of Jamie's hand to complete the transaction, She looked down at him and told him not to move. She paid for her purchase, and when she looked down again, James was gone. Later it would be confirmed on CCTV footage that James exited the butcher shop at 3:39 p.m. and Denise came rushing out at 3:40 p.m. As she exited the shop, frantic with fear, she had to choose going left or right to search for her son. She took the left passage, which turned out to be the wrong choice. Realizing her search alone would render no results, she got hold of mall security, and after a 40-minute search, the police were called in. Thank you for watching Episode 7, Terrible Teens, Chapter 1 with us here on YouTube. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe for future true crime episodes. Join us here for Chapter 2. The search for James Bulger was unlike Liverpool had ever seen, using more than 100 police officers. The media frenzy was unbelievable and the international coverage extensive. Once video footage of James being taken out of the shopping center by two teenagers was released, Denise almost felt a sense of relief. Two young boys would never hurt a baby. Grainy images of the two boys were released to the media, but to no avail. On Valentine's Day, 2 days after the kidnapping of James Bulger, a group of teenagers found the body of James on the railway tracks. A train had severed the little boy's remains in two, but the cause of death was not due to the train running him over. It was clear, however, that James had suffered many different injuries, including 42 wounds and 10 skull fractures. Oddly, blue paint had been squirted into his eyes and batteries stuffed into his mouth. Unconfirmed reports were made of batteries found in his anus, but it was confirmed that his pants and underwear was removed, which lent itself to speculation that there might have been a sexual motive for the murder. The abduction and murder of a 2-year-old was an incredible shock to the community, but none of the citizens of Liverpool were prepared for the facts that would come to light as the case unfolded. When police received a call from a concerned mother of a 10-year-old boy who had blue paint on his jacket and who happened to have skipped school, they did not think too much of it, but when his friend was identified as also skipping school for the day and having the same blue paint on his clothes, both boys and their parents were asked to accompany the police to the station. Robert Thompson was a troubled youth and known troublemaker. He was the 5th son out of 7 boys, and his single mother tried to cope with her unruly brood by drinking. The Thompson boys were notorious for playing truant, and at the time of the case, Robert had missed a third of his school year already. His partner in crime was a boy also aged 10 by the name of John Venables who, by all accounts, did not have an easier home life. He had 2 younger siblings and were just as economically challenged. John's mom also looked for solutions deeply into a bottle. John was small for his age. Doctors determined that he had suffered from alcohol fetal syndrome, which is clearly evident from his stunted growth and low-set ears. Psychologically, you can prepare yourself by reminding yourself that they were only 10, but only once you hear how incredibly young they sound can you appreciate the immaturity of these children. Police were sensitive to the ages of these children and, always having a parent present and catering to their every need. Interviews were kept short, but finally, as the police expected he would, John broke. Like his co-conspirator, he blamed the other boy for the murder, but it was evident both boys had an equal role in the horrific deed. Robert Thompson might have been the instigator, but John Venables was a willing participant from the very beginning. According to the account the 2 boys gave, they decided to skip school for the day and just be a nuisance at the mall. They shoplifted a couple of items, including the batteries and paint later found on James, harassed an old lady while she was shopping and then, out of the blue, decided to kidnap a baby. After one failed attempt, the boys spotted little James Bulger and it was game on. Toddlers have the attention span of a puppy and at precisely the right moment they lured the boy away from his mother. From the time they kidnapped James to the point they exited the mall, only 4 minutes had elapsed and in those 240 seconds, everything changed for the Bulger family. The two boys led James by his hand out of the mall and navigating through the back streets of Liverpool. They made their way to the railway tracks. This journey took more than 2 miles to complete, and even for a toddler who had not been subjected to an entire day of shopping, this journey would be harrowing. Unsurprisingly, James started crying and a total of 38 witnesses would testify to seeing the child in distress and even approaching the two boys, but Robert and John would just say it's their little brother being a pain and that they were taking him home. One witness would testify seeing a large gash on Jamie's head and another would testify seeing one of the boys kick James in the stomach. Still, not a single person, despite several signs that this child was in distress, did anything. As I tell you the official account of what happened, remember these boys were 10 years old. I doubt I knew how to tie my shoelaces, let alone plan a murder at the age of 10. The original plan was to push the toddler into oncoming traffic, but there were too many witnesses. Then they wanted to drown him in the canal, but by now an exhausted and bleeding James was too upset to cooperate. After dragging James for 2 miles to the train tracks, they then launched into an attack by throwing bricks and rocks at the little boy to kill him. Turns out murdering someone is a little harder than they present in the movies, and when James kept on getting up and asking for his mother, the two killers took turn beating him with an iron bar. As mentioned before, he was found with his pants down and batteries stuffed into his mouth. Regardless their age, the people of Liverpool were mad with rage and mobs of citizens would gather outside the courtroom shouting threats and pelting the prison wagon with rocks as it transported the boys to the proceedings. There was no doubt about the guilt of the two boys, and the question of whether they knew what they were doing was wrong was also clear. There was also too much evidence that the murder was preconceived. Both boys were found guilty and usually the sentence is life in prison, but the judge felt that the boys were too young for that kind of punishment. They were detained at Her Majesty's pleasure for the period of 12 years, but they would both eventually just each serve 8 years and then were set free under new identities. How this happened I do not understand, because the rehabilitation center was more like a hostel with outings to football matches and a first-class education, something they would never have had in their previous existence. Their conduct during this time was also far from stellar, with frequent violent episodes being reported. Robert Thompson was also caught having an illicit affair with one of the staff members at the institution. An average of £3,000 a week is spent per child to run this type of facility, and once the thousands of spent on hiding the identity of the boys came to light, the British people were furious. Venables specifically made it very difficult for authorities, by frequently telling people his real identity and continuing his aggressive behavior. He picked up a huge alcohol and drug problem, and despite being warned not to, he has returned numerous times to Liverpool, drinking and picking up girls, not caring if he ran into the Bulger family. 8 years after his release, he was convicted of being in the possession of child pornography and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Not long after he came out, he was again caught with over 1,000 child pornographic images and again he was remanded. The UK asked Canada and New Zealand very nicely if they would take Venables, but both politely declined, stating that all immigrants must meet a certain criteria and he does not meet the criteria. Robert Thompson since has vanished into the horizon. There is speculation that he had taken up with a lover in Australia, but nothing has been confirmed. This is one of those cases that leads the question, should child offenders be given a second chance? Yes, they were 10, but the acts were so brutal that the legacy will forever remain a dark shadow on the face of Liverpool. Thank you for watching episode 7. Terrible Teens. Please like, share and subscribe for further episodes here on my YouTube channel.